As we look at markets around the world and globalization, certainly developing countries like China, South America, Africa, are evolving to where we would have been at the turn of the century. So the demand for electrical controls and factory automation, ranging from push buttons up through PLCs, is certainly a part of the global markets.
One day, Fred Luke, who by now must be pretty famous even on this video here, decided that he wanted to have an international division rather than have an export department in New York. And he wanted more control over the international sales, which he could see coming in the future as widening tremendously. At that time, international sales were $6 to $7 billion, which is peanuts compared to what it is today. So he decided to pull the export department into the export part of the business into Milwaukee.
1967 I started in New York. And that time it was the export department. And we were less than 10 people. And our sales were about $7 million and so forth. Around 74, on the Bill Younger, the international division was created.
It was about 6 months after, or 8 months after, we had actually formed the international division at Allen Bradley. And it was at that time that the entire New York export office crew, legendary names, Bob Bertocchi, Manolo Valdez, and others had been summarily uprooted in New York and brought back to Milwaukee to form the core Inside Support Group.
Around the 81, Mexico finally broke up, and we associated ourselves with a gentleman by the name of Carrillo, a gentleman with a lot of money. He was millionaire in dollars. And from there we took off with, we did have some problems because of the political in Mexico and so forth, and devaluation and all that kind of jazz, and we were delayed in our program. But finally, with Mr. Carrillo, we started an assembly operation in Mexico, which included programmable controllers and industrial control devices.
From the bonded warehouse, we distributed product into Germany, and we were just about started. We had just started a sales company in Germany, in Krefeld, Germany, but we distributed into Italy. We had agents in Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium itself, France. Shortly after I came, we formed a French company, hired a general manager, and began a sales activity. All of our activities were sales and support focused in those days, with the idea that product would be not manufactured in Europe, but would be manufactured in Canada or the USA. Later on, we became a great source of business for the UK manufacturing plant when they manufactured standard control gear. We started the PLC business in the Netherlands because they had accumulated a list of customers, and we actually had the first opening session in the Singer Museum in May, June of 1975, because I had told Bill Younger and John Mason and Walt Castle, if you don't let me do this, you might as well bring me home because you're not going to get any benefit. But if you let me start the business, then we're going to have an opportunity to cash, because here it's absolutely virgin field territory.
Asia, I believe, started around the 80s. And we had a man assigned to China, John Butler, for a manufacturing operation and so forth.
When we had visited Michelin for the first time, we took our 1774 PLC down to Michelin, and they kind of did a double take because they were close to a decision probably to go with Telemecanique. And they said, "What's that?" Because it had a CRT tube and a simple programming language. We said, "That's our new PLC product." And they said, in a lightly attended meeting, a courtesy meeting, because they were doing some control business with us as they expanded in the USA, "Could you stay overnight if we bought dinner and make some presentations to some more engineers tomorrow?" We said yes. Long story short, when we walked out, we were pretty convinced, because the insiders had said to us, "We will probably make a decision to go with you, and our purchases in the next year should be close, as we begin to use this technology, to $6 million. I was excited, got to my hotel. I called Bill Younger and said to him, "I'm really excited. We visited Michelin for 2 days. I think we're going to get about $6 million worth of business if they do decide for us." And he asked me this famous question, "Rod, have you been drinking?"
When we got to be a certain size and we got the moxie, one of the things we needed to do was make sure that we could go do what we wanted to do in India, for example, without having to worry about the joint venture. So a guy named Bill Fletcher, who Don had made the head of International, did a super job, in early 90s to 93, 94, basically, and making sure that all the joint ventures were as they should be, and if we shouldn't have them, we shouldn't have them. And then what I really did was, with the team taken forward, is saying we need to grow globally. How do we do that? And how do we do that with a sales strategy? And a lot of that had to do with what we did with our sales force. And everyone says, "Well, what does your sales force have to do with that?" Well, we had customers that did business globally. Procter & Gamble built the largest liquid soap factory in the world in Tianjin, China. Now, you needed to have the Procter & Gamble people here to say, "Yes, we want to use your stuff," but you also needed the people in China to say, "Yes, we will use Allen Bradley." So what we tried to do is make sure we leveraged our strength internationally, which was our good relationships with big global customers, supported them with what we needed overseas, and put some program and funded it. Basically, let's spend the money to do the things that we need to do to grow overseas, and let's use the strengths that we have to help us do that.
We built a plant in Bletchley in England. We built a plant in Cirencester in England for magnetics. We had a close association with a German company and ultimately bought them, and where we manufactured in East Hahn, I think it was, Germany. And as time went on, we had facilities, and we bought this numerical control operation down in southern England, and they had a plant. We bought Gero in the electronics business up in Newcastle on the north part of England. So all these things happened as we were growing our international business. And Don, in his younger years, made one of our first trips to China. He spent 2 or 3 weeks in China. I'm sure he remembers it yet.
Oh, I went to China in 1985, and we opened up the very first thing that we ever did in China with a person by the name of Norm Thompson. And Bob Anderson went with us, Don Edwards, and we opened up a support center. And it wasn't in Beijing, it was up in Dalian. So we really got a chance to see China at pretty rough stages.
At that point in time, we had one relationship in Dalian, which is northern part of China. And that was a kind of a joint venture, if you will, and we were trying to start other things throughout the country. So everybody kind of fanned out and started in Dalian, went through, and it was the Wild West in China. I mean, it's nowhere near what it is today.
I have to say that in the past 10 years, I see the transformation of our company in Asia Pacific, truly from a small regional operation to a truly global operation. Today, we have roughly about 1,000 employees in Asia Pacific. Our region covers South Korea, Japan, China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and we also have a sub-region called Southeast Asia that is comprises of Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, and also to the east we have New Zealand and Australia, and finally to the west we have India.
Well, in Asia Pacific, I think what we're facing is is a high level of diversity in terms of the channel to market model. For example, in New Zealand and Australia, they are having a large portion of their business distributor business, versus in Hong Kong and Japan, they have a large portion of business based on projects. So in terms of supply chain management, just like a kind of inventory planning and demand planning and control, you'll see a high level of differences between the planning tools, the processes, and the technique, and also the criteria for them to consider, for example, what item to stock, what are the safety stock quantity, to provide a certain level of customer service. In China, I think Rockwell has been doing very well in several key markets like infrastructure, like on the transportation, the airport, railway systems, as well in consumer markets, and also we're doing pretty well in semiconductor markets. I think in Asia Pacific, we work with very clear strategy roadmap, and when we implement programs and we put resources and teams together, we know what we're heading towards before we even start. So I think that gives a very good direction, as well as you can make the team more cohesive, working towards the same goal, and that's one of the fun part that I really enjoy.
It's truly a global celebration for our customer in Asia Pacific to recognize that the brand Allen Bradley, the brand Rockwell Automation, has a lot of heritage and history and investment behind it.